I want to introduce our speaker for today. Rick Cain has worked for the St. Augustine Lighthouse and Maritime Museum for the past 20 years, overseeing operations and safety. He's served on the board of directors for the Florida Lighthouse Association, the American Lighthouse Council, and the Florida Attractions Association. He re-entered tourism and museum world after spending 20 years in the healthcare industry as a registered nurse. And prior to that, he worked as a VIP tour guide and show announcer at Universal Studios in Hollywood, California. Now, I personally have learned a lot from Rick, specifically on emergency management and response. He's been so helpful to me on that issue. I'm really excited that he's here today. He's just going to share a little bit about what he does, and then we're going to spend most of our time talking. So Rick, I'm going to pass it over to you and stop sharing at this point.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody. I want to keep this very informal, and everybody can talk whenever they feel like they have something they want to say. I've got a really brief PowerPoint I want to talk about real first to you, and I hope this isn't too remedial for those of you who are working in have worked in museums for a while. Let me see if I can pull up my slideshow. There we go. But I tend to, as a maritime museum, I think of operations as a ship. And my favorite one is the HMS Victory. I thought I'd show you a few pictures of it. If you don't know what that is, that's Lord Nelson's flagship from the Napoleonic Wars. It's at port in Portsmouth, England, where the headquarters of the British Navy is. But ships are very much like museums, and facilities I see as the keel of the ship. It's foundational to the whole facility structure. Everybody else's role is very important. You know, your executive director and your board are the officers who decide where the ship is going. But if facilities isn't there providing the basic necessities of air conditioning, bathrooms, whatever it is, it can go bad very quickly. And so in my 20 years at the Lighthouse, I served 10 of those years as the deputy director. So in a day's time, I could be finishing payroll and then running down to plunge a toilet. So that's just the nature of small museums, as you know. You do pretty much anything that needs to be done. So it's foundational, and it's commonly called the operations department as well. It's interesting, the ship's masts go all the way down through every deck and rest on the keel. It's vital to the stability of the vessel. So, but it takes everybody at the museum to make the ship go. So in facilities, generally you're dealing with structures, plumbing, painting, electrical, pest control, groundskeeping, janitorial, maintaining walkways. If in Florida, my biggest problem on the island here is I have shifting sidewalks. I don't know if anybody else has had to deal with that, but every time a sidewalk shifts, then we got a trip hazard. Communications may involve telephone lines, radios. Security involves alarm systems, exterior lighting. Officers, if needed, we don't have full-time security. And people have been pretty rowdy since COVID. And so we've had to hire temporary security officers when needed. HVAC systems, that's a huge one. I don't know how much money and time you guys put in your HVAC, but we've got multiple systems in multiple buildings, and it's just a big chore. So you can see the rest of the list there. I don't need to read the whole thing to you, but one of them is oversight of the repair and maintenance budget. And that's a biggie. So I'm working with my team right now. I have 2 regular maintenance men, and I have a facilities supervisor. And I'm trying to get them a little more involved in watching the budget and watching their spending and things like that. So we're working on that now. Event setup and takedown is huge as well. You're looking at the upper gun deck with 32-pounder ship breakers. They're called. 32 pounds is the weight of the cannonball, by the way, that the cannon shoots. So there we go. Safety is huge. I'm the safety officer at the St. Augustine Lighthouse, not because I had any formal safety training, but because I was an RN for 20 years. And they really didn't have a safety officer when I came there in 2001, so I took that over. But safety is key. You need to have your maintenance staff trained. Anybody that picks up a power tool at your museum should have power tool safety training, ladder training, harness training if they're doing anything up high. A lot of times it's better to hire third-party contractors for some of this work, because then the liability is on them, as you know. So flammable toxic storage and labeling is very important, that you have fire cabinets if you have paint or anything supplied in your facility. Obviously CPR, AED training. CPR has changed a lot since COVID. They're just doing chest compressions now and not rescue breathing. Dealing with difficult guests. I mentioned this earlier, and it was it's really been a challenge. I think people just kind of have gone crazy, and they're not really following a lot of the normal rules of conduct that we normally see. And you can speak to that from your facility in a minute, as soon as I get done with this. Disaster prep and cleanup. We went through AAM accreditation a few years ago, and I submitted our disaster plan, which dealt mostly with weather and flooding and fire and things like that. And they sent it right back to me, and they said, this is no good. Where is your active shooter scenario? Where is your emergency egress scenario? Where is your civil unrest scenario? And so I added all those things and resubmitted it, and they took it on the first pass, so I got lucky. But that was an education to me. This is HMS Victory braced in dry dock because she was going through a lot of deterioration. Record keeping is key. Personnel and management evaluations, of course, but do you have a paint color manual for your facility? Do you know what colors and what types of paints were used in what rooms? You should. It's always good to keep a manual so that you know what products were used, what the color was that was used. A physical asset list. I have to document everything that is purchased, where it went, who it was assigned to, even if it's a chair to a desk. And then if it's taken out of inventory, we have to have 2 people witness that and sign a form saying where that item went, if it was destroyed, if it was auctioned, whatever it might be. The other thing is a light bulb color and type manual. Lighting is big, especially if you have textiles in your museum. You need to know what kind of bulbs they're using, where they got them, the color spectrum, because their bulbs come in so many different colors. So we keep a bulb color and type manual at the Lighthouse. Are you doing yearly water tests on your water system and your backflow tests? You know what a backflow is? That's the pipe that comes out of the ground, goes across, has a couple of valves at the top, and then goes back in the ground. It's really just a device to stop water that's already passed out of the clean water supply from backing up into the system if there's a pressure loss. But you have to have those inspected each year and report to the city. So you're looking at Admiral Nelson's headquarters aboard the vessel. So steady as she goes, as your facilities department is the ship's keel and masts, we can think of all the other departments as the other working parts of the ship. And that's pretty much understood by everybody here, I'm sure, if you've been in museums any amount of time. You know, education is that's our mission, is to teach. And it's so vital. But if we don't have working bathrooms, then the entire crew gets sick, as do our guests. So it's foundational. And I would just say, if you find good maintenance people, pay them well and keep them on, because it's really hard to find good maintenance help that will stay. And so many people are leaving their jobs and going on unemployment still. It's been a problem. But fortunately at the Lighthouse, we have some really dedicated folks who have been there for 10 years, 15 years. So that's all important. So we all have to take care of each other and be kind, I think, during these trying times. That's the stern of the HMS Victory. It's probably the most famous part. It's a beautiful vessel. If you ever get to Portsmouth, England, go pay her a visit, because it's just a gorgeous piece of history. So there we go. That's all I have. And I'm going to stop sharing.